Have you ever felt an invisible gaze upon you? A sudden chill, the sensation that something moved in the corner of your vision, or a silent presence that seems to be there but never reveals itself. This feeling is ancient, recorded throughout history in religious texts, travelers' accounts, and the experiences of ordinary people. Ancient civilizations knew of this entity and mentioned it in their sacred writings. But over time, this knowledge became obscure, lost among myths and modern explanations. Could this presence be a celestial guardian, an ancestral spirit, or something far more sinister? Is it protecting us, testing us, or merely observing without interference? The idea of an invisible entity watching over humanity is not new. Since the earliest written records, there have been mentions of beings that see everything but rarely interact directly with humans. In the ancient Middle East, people such as the Sumerians and Egyptians believed that higher forces, often represented by divine eyes, followed every step of human beings. But were these merely metaphors for the omniscience of the gods, or was there something literal in these descriptions? In Sumerian tradition, the Anunnaki were seen as gods who came from the heavens and had the power to shape humanity's destiny. Cuneiform tablets mention entities called Ilu, a word that can mean both gods and watchers. This leads us to another enigmatic tradition, that of the Watchers, mentioned in ancient Hebrew texts. The Watchers appear in the Book of Enoch, one of the most intriguing apocryphal texts ever discovered. They were angels sent to observe and guide humanity, but some of them ended up rebelling, interfering with human destiny and passing on forbidden knowledge. This narrative raises an important question. What if not all the entities watching us have good intentions? What if some of them are here for reasons we still do not understand? The Bible also contains several passages suggesting a constant invisible presence. In verses 7 and 8 of Psalm 139, it is written, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there also." This omnipresence is traditionally associated with God. But what if the sacred texts are also referring to other entities that follow our every step? Angels, spirits, forces that record every thought and action? The concept of a being that watches without revealing itself is present in various cultures, always carrying the same mystery. Is it here to protect us or to judge us? The Egyptians had a powerful symbol representing this presence, the Eye of Horus. It was said that this eye saw everything and was a guardian against darkness. What few people know is that this symbol was not merely metaphorical. The priests of Egypt believed that invisible spiritual entities were constantly around the pharaohs, either protecting them or spying on their actions. This aligns with the beliefs of other cultures that viewed kings and rulers as having a direct connection to these hidden beings. Looking at early Christianity, we find even more direct references. The first followers of Christ believed in beings that recorded human destiny. In the book of Revelation, John describes 7 eyes upon a lamb, an image that many scholars interpret as a symbol of divine vigilance. But some believe this vision describes entities that observe, record, and wait for the right moment to intervene. Curiously, civilizations that never had contact with each other had similar myths. The Aztecs spoke of the Tsimime, deities that watched over humans and appeared in times of crisis. The Norse feared Hugin and Munin, Odin's ravens, who flew across the world, recording everything they saw. If so many cultures believed in the presence of these beings, was it merely a construct of human imagination? Or is there something real behind these narratives? What led such different peoples to the same conclusion, that something is always watching us? And the most unsettling question, if these entities are recording everything, what is the ultimate purpose of this eternal surveillance? Have you ever been alone in a silent environment and suddenly felt a fixed gaze upon you? A shiver, an inexplicable unease, as if something were there, following your movements? This sensation is not just a trick of the mind. It has been studied by scientists, documented by explorers, and reported by people throughout history. But what exactly are we sensing when we perceive an invisible gaze? Neuroscience suggests that our brain developed the ability to detect gazes as a survival mechanism. However, this explanation does not cover all cases. Experiments conducted by psychologist Rupert Sheldrake indicate that many people can sense when they are being watched, even without any apparent visual or auditory stimuli. This raises an intriguing question. If there is a biological mechanism for detecting physical eyes, why do some people report feeling this presence in places where no one is present? Historical accounts show that this sensation is not limited to the modern urban environment. Explorers and soldiers on solitary missions have frequently described the same experience. During World War II, pilots of the British Royal Air Force mentioned a presence that seemed to watch them during nighttime flights over the ocean. Polar explorer Ernest Shackleton and his team, while crossing Antarctica, reported feeling that there was someone else with them, despite being isolated in the ice. This phenomenon is known as the third man, a common experience in extreme situations where individuals have a distinct impression of being accompanied by an invisible entity. But what is more frightening? Feeling watched in a lonely environment, or realizing that this sensation can be confirmed by technological records? In the age of digital surveillance, there are countless reports of people discovering cameras activated without explanation, motion sensors triggering with no one around, and even virtual assistants responding to stimuli that never occurred. On internet forums, users share stories of sensing strange presences shortly after discussing spiritual or conspiratorial topics. Could technology be helping us detect something that has always been around us but was previously imperceptible? Another disturbing case comes from the International Space Station. Some astronauts have reported the sensation of being watched while in orbit. Russian cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev, in interviews, mentioned that there were moments when he felt he was not alone, even though he knew no one else was aboard the station. Was this merely a psychological effect caused by isolation, or is there something that observes even those beyond Earth? Similar accounts are found in remote locations on Earth. Mountaineers in the Himalayas have claimed to feel invisible presences at extreme altitudes. Offshore oil rig workers speak of fleeting shadows in their peripheral vision, despite being surrounded by miles of open ocean. What are these people perceiving? Can sensory deprivation truly induce these sensations, or is there something that manifests more clearly when we are far from civilization? Near-death experiences provide another piece to this puzzle. Patients who have undergone clinical death episodes frequently describe the presence of a silent being watching them. Doctors studying these cases, such as cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel, have observed that many of these accounts share striking similarities, regardless of the individual's culture or beliefs. If this entity manifests at the threshold between life and death, could it be watching us all the time, though we only perceive it in those moments? Another intriguing aspect is the phenomenon of shadows in peripheral vision. Many people have reported seeing something move in the corner of their eye, only to turn their head and find nothing there. Scientists explain this as a brain processing error, but some believe these apparitions are, in fact, failed attempts to perceive this presence. In certain esoteric traditions, it is said that these beings only become perceptible when our consciousness is in an altered state, whether due to fear, isolation, or a spiritual awakening. But there is something even more unsettling. Some people report that once they perceive this presence for the first time, it begins to manifest more frequently. As if, by recognizing its existence, we cause it to notice us in return. If this is true, then a disturbing question arises. What happens if we look directly at it? Since ancient times, there have been accounts of beings that watch over humanity without directly interfering. In the book of Daniel 4:13, we find mention of a mysterious figure. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. Unlike traditional angels, this entity does not appear as a messenger of God or an executor of his will. It is simply there to observe. What few people know is that, according to some mystical traditions, these watchers never cease to fulfill their role. Unlike the fallen angels mentioned in the book of Enoch, there are those who remain faithful and continue watching humanity, recording every step but without interfering. If they are still here, do they watch us out of compassion, or are they merely part of a greater plan beyond our understanding? This idea is not limited to Christianity. In Islam, there are the Kiraman Katibin, the angels tasked with recording every human word and thought. In Egyptian mythology, there were minor deities responsible for documenting the deeds of the pharaohs. Across all these beliefs, one constant remains: our actions are being recorded, whether we are aware of it or not. But has this observing presence always been spiritual? Or has humanity, perhaps unconsciously, recreated this concept in a physical form? Consider the digital age we live in: surveillance cameras, artificial intelligence, facial recognition. We are now under constant observation, but this time by human eyes and machines. If our ancestors believed for millennia that an invisible entity recorded everything, could we, in some way, be mirroring this principle through modern technology? This theory is not as far-fetched as it seems. Scientist Kevin Warwick, a pioneer in the study of merging biology with technology, suggests that in the future, we may reach a state of collective consciousness, digitally connected. This would mean that every thought, action, and emotion could potentially be visible to all, as if we were artificially recreating the spiritual concept of the all-seeing eye. But what if this consciousness has existed for millennia and we are merely trying to imitate it? Another intriguing point is that certain secret societies have sought ways to see these invisible entities throughout history. Among the rituals of ancient esoteric orders, there are records of practices supposedly designed to grant a glimpse of these watchers. Alchemical texts from the Renaissance speak of methods to expand perception and see beyond the veil. In the Middle Ages, certain forbidden manuscripts warned of the danger of trying to see what does not want to be seen. A classic example comes from the occultist John Dee, advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He believed he could communicate with watching angels and developed a system called Enochian, a language supposedly taught by these entities. In his writings, he describes attempts to make contact, during which he sensed an invisible presence, one that never fully revealed itself. What does this mean? Could these be the same observing beings that never respond directly? Some modern accounts suggest that attempting to perceive these watchers may draw their attention. Occultists report that during certain deep concentration rituals, they have felt presences around them, formless shadows that seem to be there, yet never fully manifesting. What happens if we actually manage to see them? And more importantly, do they want to be seen? Sacred texts tell us that there is a book in which everything is recorded, the Book of Life, mentioned in Revelation. Many interpretations suggest that it is merely a symbol of divine memory, but what if it is something more? What if the idea of a spiritual archive, where all is written is real? Some Eastern traditions speak of the Akashic records, a supposed dimension where all memories of the universe are stored. But who are the guardians of this record? There is something even more unsettling about this question. Why, throughout history, have different cultures believed that these beings never interfere directly? Why do they only observe? Is it because they are not allowed to intervene? Or because they are waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? And what if that moment is closer than we think? If something is watching us but we cannot see it, does that mean our senses are limited, or that this entity exists in a different reality from ours? This mystery raises an even more intriguing question. What if this presence is not just spiritual, but interdimensional? Science already acknowledges that our perception of reality is incomplete. Theoretical physics suggests that the universe may contain additional dimensions beyond the three we know. In 1954, physicist Hugh Everett III proposed the many worlds theory, in which multiple realities coexist, separated only by vibrations that our senses cannot detect. Similarly, string theory suggests that the universe could have up to 11 dimensions, with some layers of reality overlapping our own without us being able to perceive them. But what happens when someone, somehow, manages to access these hidden realities? Throughout history, various experiments have attempted to expand human perception beyond what the eyes can see. In the 1970s, the CIA conducted Project Stargate, a secret research program on remote viewing, where trained agents tried to see distant locations using only their minds. Some participants claimed that while exploring unknown regions, they felt invisible presences watching their movements. Strangely, in multiple tests, the agents reported shadowy figures or faceless entities that seemed to become aware of the attempt to observe them. If these entities exist in another dimension, are we catching brief glimpses of their presence? Or is it that when we try to see them, we are the ones drawing their attention? Similar reports appear in studies on out-of-body experiences. People who have undergone astral projections say that upon leaving their bodies, they notice still shadows around them, silently observing. Some describe the sensation of being analyzed by invisible beings, as if something is recording every detail of the experience. These descriptions align with accounts from mediums and esoteric researchers, who claim that certain entities never manifest directly but are always present. But what exactly are they waiting for? Another intriguing clue comes from experiments conducted by neuroscientist Michael Persinger, who studied the effects of electromagnetic fields on the human brain. He developed a device called the God helmet, which stimulated the temporal lobe and induced altered states of consciousness. The most curious finding? Many participants reported sensing an invisible presence in the room, something Persinger referred to as the sensed presence effect. This suggests that these entities may be around us all the time, but we can only perceive them in certain states of consciousness. If this is true, are we surrounded by an invisible reality, where these presences move freely without us knowing? Another intriguing detail is that, across various cultures, there are accounts of individuals who seem to be marked by this presence from birth. Certain spiritual lineages speak of people who have a special connection with these invisible observers, being watched by them throughout their lives. Some occult traditions claim that these entities choose specific individuals to observe more closely, whether because of their destiny, energy, or a purpose we do not yet understand. What makes some people more prone to sensing this presence? Is it a gift or a curse? Unlike what was previously suggested, perhaps this entity is not waiting to be noticed. Perhaps it has already chosen whom it wants to observe. If that is the case, then the most unsettling question is, why some people and not others? What makes them different? If this entity truly watches us, is there a way to sense its presence? Some people report feeling this invisible force at specific moments, but is it merely imagination, or are there patterns that indicate when and where it manifests? Curiously, many accounts of this sensation occur at night, particularly between 3 and 4 a.m., a time often associated with paranormal experiences. Psychologists suggest that this period coincides with the deepest phase of sleep, when the mind is more susceptible to hallucinations. But there's something more unsettling. Why do so many different cultures believe this is the hour of spirits? In ancient traditions, this time frame was seen as the moment when the veil between dimensions grows thinner, allowing certain presences to come closer more easily. Another common pattern is that many people report feeling this presence during moments of great emotional transition. There are documented cases of individuals who, during periods of intense grief, suffering, or transformation, experience sensations of being watched, or even inexplicable phenomena around them. But why? Does this entity manifest in these moments because our perception is heightened? Or is it waiting for something to happen before intervening in some way? Some people report feeling this presence in multiple places throughout their lives, as if they are being followed. No matter where they move or travel, the feeling of being observed always returns. There are stories of individuals who have noticed strange patterns when revisiting old locations, objects in the exact same position they left them years before, familiar noises in houses they had not returned to, or a déjà vu sensation accompanied by the feeling of an invisible presence. If this entity is always present, why does it seem to manifest only to certain people? Another intriguing phenomenon involves those who claim to have seen this entity in distorted forms, such as in reflections or video recordings. Unlike fleeting shadows in peripheral vision, these accounts describe something captured by chance: a strange reflection in a mirror, a figure in a photograph where no one was present, or distortions in videos recorded during moments of solitude. Some paranormal researchers suggest that these entities may become perceptible in reflections because these surfaces capture light frequencies that our eyes cannot detect. And what about this entity's relationship with technology? While many people report inexplicable malfunctions in electronics, there's an even more intriguing pattern. These anomalies frequently coincide with significant moments in a person's life. Some claim that lights flicker or devices shut off by themselves when they are experiencing intense stress or making major decisions. Does this mean the entity is merely watching, or could it be influencing these moments in some way? Even more unsettling is the idea that this presence does not manifest for everyone. Many people go their entire lives without ever sensing anything unusual. Others, however, report strange moments since childhood, as if they have been marked in some way. Is this entity selective? Does it choose who can perceive it, and who will never be aware of its existence? If this invisible force truly selects whom it watches, the final question remains: how do you know if you are one of the chosen? If this entity has always been here, silently watching, then the big question is, why? Many religious and spiritual traditions claim that there are beings tasked with recording our actions, such as angels in Christianity and Islam. But what if this observation is far more than just keeping records for a future judgment? What if we are the object of study? This theory suggests that humanity may possess something that this entity seeks to understand, or perhaps even needs. What makes us unique? Our consciousness, our ability to create, love, evolve? Various spiritual texts describe humanity as a special species, endowed with something even angels do not possess: free will and the ability to transform reality. Could this observation be an attempt to understand how we use this ability? But there is an even more unsettling possibility. What if this entity is not just watching us, but studying us for a greater purpose? The Gnostics spoke of the archons, invisible beings that manipulate humanity and keep our perception limited to the physical reality. But what if, rather than simply controlling us, this entity is monitoring us because we pose a threat? If we were merely passive pieces in a cosmic game, why would we require such constant surveillance? The holographic universe theory suggests that our reality may be nothing more than a projection, a cosmic experiment. But if we are inside an experiment, then what is the ultimate objective? Some scientists, like physicist Nick Bostrom, propose that we could be living in a highly advanced simulation, designed to study our evolution or test human reactions under different circumstances. But who is conducting this test? And more importantly, when will it end? Perhaps the answer lies with those who feel this presence most intensely. Some people report the sensation of being watched their entire lives, as if they have been marked by this entity. But is everyone monitored equally? Or is there a hidden criterion behind this selection? And what if the purpose of this observation is not just to record us, but to wait for something from us? Could this entity be anticipating a shift in human consciousness, an event that would change everything? For a long time, we have wondered whether this entity will one day reveal itself. But what if that is not the real question? What if this entity is not just waiting for the right moment to show itself, but for the right moment to act? Throughout history, we find accounts, sacred texts, and scientific theories suggesting that something is constantly watching us. Whether it is a spiritual entity, an interdimensional being, or part of a vast cosmic experiment, the truth remains: this presence has never left us. But the question is not just, what is it? It is, why is it here? Perhaps this entity is not merely a passive observer. Perhaps it is waiting for something, analyzing our thoughts, decisions, and evolution. But what would happen if, one day, this silent observation came to an end? If the entity that has always remained hidden finally decided to intervene? If you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, I've specially selected some videos filled with deep knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you will love. Just click on one of them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.